Debt-Free TV, in association with getoutofdebtfree.org.
Hey! Thanks for coming, guys. I'm really humbled. You know, there's so many amazing people here. Really new faces that I haven't seen before. This is superb. So many old sweats here as well, sharing their knowledge. It's really good to get together and share this information. Just to put things in the picture, I mean, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a guru, I'm the same as you guys. I'm just a working class Joe, yeah. Many years ago, started asking lots of questions. I realised something was badly wrong, and I didn't understand why. The education system hadn't geared me up for this. So I started reading books, and I started asking questions and writing letters and being a pain in the bum, and meeting wonderful people like you. So I mean, what I'm doing here now, I'm not trying to teach anyone, genuinely not trying to teach anyone. I'm just trying to share the information I've got, I've found useful to me, and you guys do with this what you will. I apologise for my voice, I had a man flu during the week. The chemist thought that was hilarious, I said I've got man flu. Okay, so anyway, if I take a swig of honey every now and again, it just helps lubricate my throat. If you get problems, has anyone got problems understanding what I'm saying? Right, I'll try and speak clearly. I can't shout. I've been in the building site all week, and the guys have had a week off of me shouting at them. I think it's wonderful. Right, so the object of his lecture is quite interesting, because the first chap we had on, the Australian gentleman, right, some of the stuff he touched on, I'm at the back going, yeah, me, yeah, because it was such a huge overlap, and it's amazing that people on two different continents studying different subjects, there's such an overlap. So I mean, you know the definition of proof. Scientific proof is when two people come here with two different experiments and they both prove the same thing. We're coming together towards a proof here now, guys. You know, superb. And it's not just me, there's other people in this room doing their own research, and it's all matching up from what other people are coming together with. So, and what I always say at the moment as well, because of this Brexit thing happening, I'm reading the blogs, I'm reading the newspapers, and I'm not listening to the stories, I'm reading the comments, and I'm getting engaged with public reaction. The can of worms is open now, guys. It's open. People are now asking questions. They're discussing things that a year ago we were getting accused of being nutters and, you know, weirdos and stuff, you know. They're now openly discussing these on the news and in blogs and in Parliament even. They're discussing things that, you know, they'd rather they wouldn't discuss. So we need to keep a momentum up. Not to cause, we don't revolution, I don't violence, we're not promoting any of that nonsense. Get people asking questions, and the power, the only power you have is not in gangs, not in groups, is knowledge. Me, you and everybody is knowledge, knowing stuff, yeah, and sharing that knowledge and trying to assist other people by imparting knowledge and information to them. Because it's knowledge is the real power. Okay, so I've done a few talks in the past. This is one I did maybe 2 years ago, and it was like, right, people don't get it, right? Because I was asking lots of questions. I knew there was something missing. I was reading all the law books and looking how the law actually worked, and the two didn't marry up. The law book said this should happen, and in reality it wasn't happening. Well, why is that not happening? And then there's how they openly are just doing what they want in the courts. I mean, it's just absolutely criminal what they're doing in these places. There's obviously collusions there between agencies that shouldn't be colluding with each other, and there is a common goal there. But how are they getting away with this? Why is there no legal system? Why is it if you go into court and start quoting Magna Carta, Bill of Rights or Constitution, judges are saying, I wonder if that Constitution stuff in my court? Well, this is obviously something really big's happened. I got a letter one day addressed to the occupier, and that's triggered it. Why are they calling me the occupier? Okay, so I started looking up into occupation. And then what I'm going to do now is just give you a snapshot. It's not a full lecture, it's going to be a snapshot, enough to hopefully get you guys looking into this yourself, because I promise you, I'll now give you information that will change your views and how everything works, right? And you'll start seeing there's a different game getting played, and we're playing the wrong game, the wrong board. Is a real game getting played? We don't know the play. We don't know the pieces, we don't know the places. I can point in the right direction with that. It's how you identify yourself. So there's domestic, there's European Union, and there's international law. Okay, that's the three main jurisdictions we're talking about, yeah. We're all playing domestic wrong. We're playing the wrong jurisdiction. And after I've messed with this and give you some information here, hopefully we can have a discussion afterwards and you guys can give your ideas. You know, as I say, there's a lot to this. So I've called this an occupied land and an occupied people. 5 years ago, 6 years ago, a gentleman I was talking to had been in court, and I had a chat with the judge afterwards. And the judge, in course of the conversation, the judge said, yeah, but don't you know we're an occupied people? So this chap went, whoa, stop, we're occupied people. At that point, the judge tried to back off the conversation and left the room. Right, this was just a private little chat, yeah? But what I think for a judge to say we're an occupied people, wow, right, we fought 2 wars not to be occupied. You'll find we've been occupied in 1066, we've never been out of occupation. Right, so, do apologise for this, can try and focus that a bit there if it remains just the front. Right, so anyway. So what it is a newspaper article where showed you Prince Charles shaking hands with Jerry Adams, and well, it's nonsense about we'll never deal with terrorists, and you know, I understand this, people get political views on it, you know, but there was a lot more to that than actually it was the case. But there was an article written by Peter Hitchens, a man I like his analytical mind. What he did do is he said, the picture of Prince Charles meeting Jerry Adams is inexpressibly sad. There is no point in protesting against it. Worse things will be happening soon, against which we will soon be equally powerless. It is like living in a defeated and occupied country, right? That's what got my attention when I read that. Only lonelier because most people don't even realise that a lasting and profound disaster has overtaken them. The horrid handshake is just one of the many things that now has to happen and will go on happening as long as I live. Like you, I have no power to stop them, no effective way to object to them. I know many people who quite rightly and quite wrongly believe that such things are good, signed and praiseworthy. For we now live in a kingdom of lies, in which almost everything is upside down or twisted, in which most people are unhappily fooled into thinking, acting and voting against their own best interests. That was Peter Hitchens. I'm not making a call to Peter Hitchens, but I like the tone of that. So I think they all feel the same way. Right. So it's a Norman conquest and occupation, right? Absolute ownership of land has been impossible. This is from English law. This is one of the Smith and Newton's English law. It's one of the seminal works on the subject. Yeah. So it's Norman conquest and occupation. Absolute ownership of land has been impossible. William the Conqueror considered himself owner of all land in England and parcelled out to his barons, who became his tenants. Okay. So that's since the Norman conquest. That's how far back this goes. We've always been conquered. We've always been occupied. Okay. This is from one of the main textbooks on English law. Right. The reason I've gone occupying power versus sovereign power, we'll cover that shortly. This is the key. And once I explain that, you'll start seeing it everywhere around about you. Why there's a duality and everything. Occupation, just from various dictionaries. The act or process of holding or possessing a place. The state of being state. Remember, we live in a state. Don't mention earlier on there about the word state. State is a state of war, peace, state of slavery, master, slavery or freedom. That's what the word state means. And the army, they call it the bikini state. It tells you if we're at war, if we're at what the state of alert is. We're living in a state. It's a state of, I mean, I just say a state of peace, whatever. The state of been held or possessed. Invasion, conquest and control of a nation or territory by foreign armed forces, the military government exercising control over an occupied nation or territory. Right? JIVE, this is the joint something American, this is the American JIVE. What's it called?
Judge Africa General.
Yeah, it's the legal system, the military legal system, yeah. You see the movies, you know, the wearing uniforms and the term, so military government. So the term military government is used to describe the supreme authority exercised by an armed force over the lands, property, and inhabitants of enemy territory, or allied or domestic territory recovered from enemy occupation, or from rebels treated as belligerents. We'll cover belligerents, what that is. It is exercised when an armed force has occupied such territory, whether by force or by agreement. So you can occupy not by just force, you can do it by agreement, and that is, we're now going to EU territory, okay? We're now going to United Nations territory as well, with Britain. Occupation by agreement. Whereby force agreement has substituted its authority for that of the sovereign or a previous government. Sovereignty is not transferred by reason of occupation, but the right of control passes to the occupying force, limited only to international law and custom, not domestic law. They make domestic law now, as international law governs them. The theatre commander bears full responsibility for military governor, but may delegate both his authority and title to a subordinate commander. Now, if you look at all these British protectorates, they've all got a governor in place, something you start taking a very careful look at these words. If you go to a website called archive.org, you can download a load of dictionaries there. I've been saying this for years to people. Your legal dictionaries throw them out. They're just an interpretation of something in another dictionary, right? Get commercial dictionaries, maritime dictionaries, financial dictionaries, get military dictionaries, and to me military dictionaries are mind-blowing. When you start looking at words you think you know and realise as in military, they've got multiple definitions, and there is a military definition for most of these words. Court, judge, summons, all these, court order. What did they give you in a court order? Your summons. There's a whole raft of things, but really look at these words in multiple dictionaries, and don't miss out the military dictionaries. The older the dictionary, the better. You can go online now, you can download the Gulf War, the American military revised dictionary. Some good words in there. There's a lot of words that can be played with, because you don't want to give too much away. The British have done the same thing. If you go to old dictionaries from the American Civil War and from sort of British Crimea wartime, First World War, they did a dictionary for Americans serving with the British Army, so they could understand what we were referring to. And some of the terms we use, those are really interesting because you see how different words come in. So, I would argue that Tony Blair ceased to become a Prime Minister and became a president. We are now living as a duality here, and what Tony Blair became was a president of a republic. And Cameron now, because nobody talks about what the party's going to do, it's what is Blair going to do, what is Cameron going to do. They now talk about the leader as if he's now a president. That worries me greatly when we're doing it. We don't live in a republic here. Anyway, the term occupied territory is just used to mean an area, any area in which military government is exercised by an armed force. It does not include territory in which an armed force is located, but has not assumed supreme authority. Okay, we're under NATO. We'll come back to that. Okay. Right, the laws of war. The Hague Convention of 1899 and 1907. These are documents you really do need to read. They're so enlightening, and you can use these. You can actually quote these, and you can quote these in court. The courts have to comply with the Geneva Convention and the Hague Convention. They have to comply with them, no choice. Okay, you can't quote these. The Hague Convention, GC4 it's called, were the first multilateral treaties that addressed the conduct of warfare and were largely based on the Lieber Code, which was signed and issued by US President Abraham Lincoln to the Union forces of the United States in 1863, during the American Civil War. The Lieber Code was the first official comprehensive codified law that set out regulations for behaviour in times of martial law, protection of civilians and civilian property, and punishment of transgression. Now, the British already had our Lex Britannica, but we'd resolved our differences with common law. We didn't need this level of military code in America. The 1874 Brussels Declaration, which was never adopted by all major nations, listed 56 articles that drew inspiration from the Labour Code. Much of the regulations in the Hague Convention were borrowed heavily from the Labour Code. Now what that was to do was because Europe was fighting with each other. The French hated the Germans hated everybody, Italians run away from it. Everybody was just fighting each other. Yeah, the Austrians didn't know if they were French, German, or what they were. So what they did do is they decided to codify, to tidy up the conduct of warfare in Europe. So they adopted the set elements of the Labour Code. The British sort of stood by the sidelines and went, yeah, okay, because we were not the daddy, yeah, okay, went. Children would fight each other. We didn't really adopt the Labour Code at that point, but it was widely adopted by other European nations. Right, the law of occupation concept. These are key, right? Sovereignty may not be alienated through the use of force. So say for example, somebody comes and invades the UK, wants to do it legitimately under international law, they cannot kick out the sovereign power. They can't kick out the Queen, they can't kick out Parliament, they can't kick out our sovereign institutions, our agencies, our government department. They can't kick them out all by force. All they can do is bring in an alternative, right? So, and what they'll do is they'll change the name. It's called mirroring, boys. So what they do is they copy it, they try and look as identical, the name sounds similar. Her Majesty's Courts and Court Service becomes HMCPS. It looks the same, smells the same, completely different entity acting under different authorities. So there's, when you look at Revenue and Customs, it's now called HMRC. The Queen is now an EU citizen, you all know that, yeah?
Mediatisation.
The Queen became an EU citizen with the signing of the Lisbon Treaty. Lisbon Treaty was a surrender document, it was a capitulation document. Surrender is what the army does, military does. Civilians capitulate. It's when Germany in the border knee capitulation or capitulation outside the doors. So civilians capitulate, the army surrenders. Okay? So if anyone ever asks you to surrender something, refuse. I'm not a soldier, I will capitulate. I'm not going to surrender. So somebody says surrender your documents, I surrender, I'm not military. Okay, these words are very specific. So this thing about sovereignty, an occupying power cannot oust the sovereign power. All it can do is come in there, assist it, administrate it, set up alternatives. If people choose to use alternative, knowingly or unknowingly, choose to use alternatives, such as a land registry, which is why we have 2 land registries in this country, why we get policemen and constables, you start seeing this duality everywhere now. Why? Has anyone spoken to the Minister for Transport recently? There's now a Secretary for Transport, military word, we'll do some military definitions at the end. There's now a Secretariat, right? If you go into the government website and look up the Cabinet, try and find the ministers. There's a few ministers, and God knows what they are, these new little things they made. All the main ministers have gone now, been replaced by secretaries. The ministries have been replaced by directorates. All military words. Right? These are all military words. Do it for yourself. Go to the website, look up the Cabinet, right? And just challenge yourself. Count how many ministers are left. We used to have a minister for everything, didn't we? Oh God, it's all very recent in the last 4 years. Right? They've all been replaced now. So it's now a Department for Transport, not the Ministry for Transport. Yeah, Department for Health, not Ministry. See, I see these things, right? I would follow. Anyway, so that's that one. Now, interestingly, I would say with us personally, going back to the previous gentleman was talking about here, yeah, we've got this duality. One of us is sovereign power, one of us is the foreign power, occupying sovereign power. That's us, ourselves, yeah. So us as a man, that name and that identity has now been occupied by this legal creature, this legal constructive trust and created under law. It's now occupying us. You start seeing it everywhere. It's in the Bible, by the way. You see it in the Bible, this occupation. Right? Useful space to fill, useful device to fill the spatial problem. Spatial problem. You see that word spatial spelled with a T, right? You know you're talking Agenda 21. It's a French word, it's not British, it was never ever in any publications in Britain until Agenda 21 was published. You started talking spatial problems. There was a French guy that drafted that. So you start seeing that with the T, right? That's Agenda 21 topic, right? Spatial problem is to do with moving transporting goods around. Transport, port authorities under military control, roads. Did you know motorways are actually military roads? Did you know that dual carriageways and motorways are all military roads? That's why they've got their own special police officers. That's why they've got highways agencies and stuff, because they're all military roads. In time of war, you'll get kicked off the road. It's happened in the past. It's happened during the Second World War.
Fuel dumps all the way around.
Yeah, that's what they're for. So the spatial problem there is to do with moving transport around in the event that we need to go and defend ourselves and go in the offensive. We need the transport infrastructure. So that's a useful device to fill a spatial problem. Foreign state power, the territory of a continuing sovereign state. So I'll use the EU here. The UK, through corrupt officials and through bad politicians whose questionable sexuality, potentially liable to blackmail, signed us over to this foreign power, capitulated and surrendered us to this foreign power. Same happened in the Lisbon Treaty. There was no referendum with the Lisbon Treaty. Gordon Brown and Miliband went over and they signed it, dropped us in the whole world of up, because what they did was surrender us. That was a surrender document. So anyway, so that's by the way. But that's a foreign state that's now come in. Now the European Union is not in itself a country, it's technically not a state, and with a capital S. What they are is an administrative authority. That's what the EU is, it's the administrative authority. So they come in and they conquer countries, or they occupy countries by providing the administration. Occupying administration is what they do. They don't do the occupation themselves, NATO does that. Our guys, our guys just surrender. For example, Parliament's about to empty here. Watch this space, by the way, right? They've suddenly told us that Buckingham Palace, the Queen and the family, are going to pop off out there because they need to do urgent repairs on it. Same with Parliament, both at the same time. To me, what's happened is we're now getting the management withdrawing, the bailing.
What do you think about the referendum? What's happening then? This referendum?
It won't change it. We go back to a form of sovereignty again, but we'll talk about the end of the referendum. That's an interesting one. People think they're voting for they're going to get more out of it than actually they think they're going to get. But anyway, foreign state power. Look at Iraq. They were in Iraq. So this was under the guise of humanitarian, and this is a really interesting area. Under the guise of humanitarian assistance, right? So no longer they've realised we can't go in there and say we're going to go in there with military force and invade this country, right? Because everybody goes, oh, you bad people, and sanctions happen, and media comes on. So what they do now, they play with it and invent a humanitarian cause, or they invent weapons of mass destruction. This is a new thing, it's just very recent in this way, right? Weapons of mass destruction changed the game totally now, right? So what they can say is humanitarian, or it's necessity, the sheer scale of potential emergencies warrants doing this, right? This humanitarian thing is, this humanitarian thing is really big, because what they can do is they can say, we're going to help you guys with our tanks and our soldiers and blah 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 blah, right? And in fact what it is actually an occupation, but they're doing it by trying to create it through civilian means, yeah? Very, very devious. Think of Agenda 21, by the way. See us focus on Agenda 21 and environment and climate change and all the disaster and doom. If you go on the MI6 website, look at the stage. I've actually taken them down now, by the way. They'll be back up again, because a few of them are looking at it. But there's 5 states that were left in Britain. There's imminent attack all the way down to low. There's no state of nothing happening. So there's 5 states of alert, same as the army. 5 states of alert. There's never a state of no alert. So that means we're on permanent footing for war. Okay, have been since the Second World War, have been since the First World War actually. And this goes back, and interesting, if you can get a copy of a book, a friend of mine got me a copy of it, it's wonderful. It's called Public Acts, this is Government Acts, Public Acts of Parliament, 1796, this is just before the Napoleonic War, right? You see how they started getting the country geared up, ready for war. This war we knew was coming, how they started gearing up. Anyway, and this country did the same in the 1930s. I've got a fantastic document. If anyone wants a copy of this, I'll give you a copy of it. We've got a friend in the National Archives who found this. He finds lots of good stuff that's buried in the back that we don't know about. And it's report number 0013. And whereas it's 1934, that's where the cabinet sat down. It's a cabinet meeting, it's a report, and then the meeting minutes about extending ministerial powers and giving ministers extended powers so they could circumvent Parliament. The reason was, again, because of war, potential war with Germany coming off, they realised I can understand they have to react quickly to events, and Parliament can be a bit slow and cumbersome. So yes, the ministers did need some powers to react quickly to emergency situations, right? However, there was another meeting in 1937 where this was the House of Lords, and it's a handheld report from the House of Lords, where the Lords are complaining that the ministers are abusing these powers already, war is being kicked off, and they're reassured that that we can trust the ministers today. So when the Lord says, "What can we trust the ministers of tomorrow?" though? And that was left hanging in midair. He says, and the phrase was, "What we have granted is government by decree." Now, if you want an interesting exercise, if you go on legislation.gov.uk, in the search box, type in the word order and pick a year. 2016, 2015, 2014, right? Page after page. This is ministerial orders. Now, what a ministerial order does is a way of subverting Parliament, right? So they've got a fairly wide range of powers, such as creating Greater Manchester region and regionalising Britain. This is a defence issue. So these ministers, just look how many orders are issued each year in comparison to the Acts and Statutes. It's phenomenal. So we all complain about Acts and Statutes. My biggest problem is these orders. Who are these ministers? I don't trust one of them. Not one of them do I trust. There were some real scumbags of late. There were some real shitbags down there marching, calling themselves ministers with all these huge amounts of powers. And I don't trust any of them. And with God knows what they've been doing to all of it's secret as well. Anyway. Okay, so it's a gap filling assigning authority. So if a government abandons its post, which is going to happen down here, but if a government abandons its post, such as Parliament abandoning the Parliament building, and the Queen abandoning somebody's lost or somebody's won. It's like they're all such Hamilton academicals that I don't confuse them. Arbroath, Thistle or something, I'll confuse them. So we have one country, the government does a bump, removes itself, or gets removed through revolution.
Did you start the camera again?
Recording again, yeah. What you can do is another country can step in. United Nations, as you can step in and assign a temporary, and the key word here of occupying administration is they must be temporary, can assign a temporary administration to tide them over until the government sorts out itself until the country sorts itself out a new government, right? However, you know as well as I do, these temporary administrations step in, and it's not quite as temporary as you think it is, and it doesn't come for free either, right? Just look at all the South American countries.
Is that like the government was set up in Germany in Eastern Kingdom?
Yes. Oh yeah, Germany is a classic example in the Second World War. Absolutely classic example. And some people still, I was talking about a German gentleman last week, they're very informed, and he agrees with me, Germany still under occupation.
Yeah.
Merkel's a puppet. Anyway, it's a mirror. Now, I've book here, but this I would recommend to everybody. I mean, I do read a lot of books, and I try to do it, recommend the one book of all the pile that I would recommend you. That one is by a chap called Professor Eyal Ben-Benesti. I'll give it, I believe you can write it down, right? This is not a dull, dry textbook. What it looks at, but it's not. This guy he's an Israeli. He's one of the top world authorities on this subject. His father was as well. His father was a bit of a rabble-rouser, a really interesting guy to read his stuff, right? What Eyal's done, he's called the First World War, Second World War, he talks about the Kosovo conflict, he talks about Iraq, he talks all these different conflicts and occupations that took place, and the background to it, the legal background to it, and how the occupation took place, what it did, the good side, the bad side, etc., etc. And he builds a very comprehensive picture. So rather than just reading textbook stuff in 1742, this was treaty and saying, he actually gives you the live examples, and sometimes you just sit in your head in your hands how they get away with this kind of nonsense, yeah?
What's that book called?
It's called The International Law of Occupation, 2nd edition, by, I'll spell his name, Professor Ayal Benveniste. His first name is E-Y-A-L, so it's E for Echo, Y for Yacht, A for Alpha, L for Lima, and his surname is Ben, B-E-N, V-E-N-I-S-T-I, so it's Ben Ven Isti.
B-E-N what?
B-E-N-V-E-N-I-S-T-I. Right, it's called International Law of Occupation. It's not a dull, dry textbook, guys, trust me. I've got some textbooks here, my eyes fall at the end reading them. I read this in 2 sittings, and of all the books I own, a lot of books, right, of all the books I own, right, I have to buy another copy, because the copy I've got at home is so scribbled on. I can't, it's distracting to read it now. So I've got so many notes and scribbles, and it's every page, and every 3 different colours, there's just so much in it. And every page I was getting bang, you get those eureka moments of suddenly understand, now I understand. And I'm constantly thinking of the UK, I'm thinking of local government, I'm thinking of how the regions now, these administrative regions and administrative sub-regions, are now replacing the councils, the sovereign councils, the sovereign boroughs, the sovereign counties, and now been replaced by these occupied administrative regions. As an interesting area to talk about. So that book, if you want to pass it around, have a look at it, it's strongly, it's 24 quid, I promise you guys, it's brilliant, you will read it and you will pass it on. Anyway, yeah, the sovereign regions, councils, yeah, I wrote to government, the Department for Local Government and Communities, I want to say communities, local government and communities, a couple of years ago, and I said there would be 5 councils in Wigan. You know this story with me with Wigan Council. There's 5 different corporations claiming to be Wigan Council. And I go to court and there's 3 names getting thrown at me. Who's the real one? You're the government, can you tell me? Does anyone get a guess what the answer was to that? You have no idea. Ask them. I was told, ask them. Check the Constitution. Well, the Constitution's got 2 names on it. Front cover's one name, inside they refer to another name, and I have to ask them. I mean, what can he? So what does that tell you? Central government doesn't know who's running these boroughs now. Doesn't know, because I would argue central government is still sovereign, and the local authorities, who are now regional sub-assemblies, different sub-administrative regimes, are now dancing to a different puppet. They're under a different franchise. So central government, they've very limited powers they've got now over the sub-regions. Councils and counties they have, and the boroughs and the counties they have in the towns, but these have now been replaced by city regions. You're all aware of city regions, yeah? Right, yeah?
Unitary authorities.
Yes. Well, the UK, if you go to the, what's it called? The UK Irish Notarial Foundation, I think they're called UKINF. Right? If you go on the website UKINF, right? So this is the notary publics for UK and Ireland, right? And page 2 says the UK is a unitary authority, right? Okay, yes, it is. There's a civil war, absolutely is. To the extent of a unitary authority. I thought we were under constitutional monarchy though. So goes back to the Civil War. That's a good point you make here. One goes back to the Civil War. I'll tell you now, the Civil War isn't ended. It never ended. Right, what happened was they made a compromise. They created this duality to keep both sides. Because instead of creating one government and one regime, they created 2. And what they did do is they did 2 gangs. They did a carve-up and shared it amongst themselves. So you get a unitary authority, parliament, and then you've got the sovereign constitutional democracy. Okay, so there's a duality everywhere you see. De jure, Now, the sovereign power is hereby is de jure, is by law, right? So the sovereign power is done by referendum, which is whether to give us referendum Brexit to give us some authority, which I don't think we should have. So or the king's brought in by, you know, what they got the law of God, or there's some premise or some pretense, there's some law there giving them that authority, okay? And then de facto, so the occupying power is a de facto administration. They're there because they're there. We just are. Right? There's no law saying we're here. We just are. We'll get men with guns, do what you're told, shut up. We've got policemen out there with an IQ of 42 out there at the moment, running around and don't know the law. But this happened. I got arrested a few weeks ago by 2 policemen who admitted for the camera they didn't know human rights. I got arrested for asking what law they wanted my name, by the way. Right? These people are chimps in uniforms, guys. I've no disrespect to the police here. You know, we need good police officers. They're not giving us good police officers. They're giving these, I don't know, what parking attendants with badges. Seriously.
What is your name?
Me. Yeah, so, I mean, they admitted for the camera, they had never seen their own code of conduct. They had never been taught human rights. It's in their bloody oath. Oh, by the way, did you know the police oath changed from our lady, Queen, to just our Queen? I was at the court on the road diversion here. I was in court back in October there, council tax. I decided to go the last ever time in these horrible places. I was proving a point, and some friends with me was proving a point. And I said to the judge, I says, I want that roof from the wall, because I was sitting under this coat of arms thing. I says, because it is the space you have this under our sovereign lady's coat of arms. They've got us now talking with the Queen, it's actually a sovereign lady. Yeah, we used to refer to queens in the past as our sovereign lady. We need to start doing that again, identifying this sovereign queen, not the queen of the occupying power. She's this duality, her as well. So you can choose whatever one you want. Why is it changed from, it's now Britannic Majesty, whatever that means. It sounds posh, it means nothing. Victoria was called Imperial Majesty, with all these different names, yeah. But anyway, so as far as I'm concerned, I'm happy to swear an oath of allegiance to our sovereign lady.
But when you divide the country, of course, she's on the Britannic.
They also stopped it from being an oath to an attestation a couple of years back.
Yeah. There's a whole raft of changes happening here. I'm trying to find out how they've changed and why how they're getting away with it. And this answers the question, right? So, and it's by proxy. So you'll find what they'll do is all these times, an occupying power will use NATO. The Americans will use NATO, or we will use NATO to occupy somewhere, or we'll use some third party like United Nations, or we'll use, so again, it's very murky, and where people think occupations is an army, because they were men in uniforms with tanks, they take over the country, stick a flag in, we're now in charge. That's gone, those days are gone now. Far more subtle, far more devious, far more murky. It's actually got to the stage, as Professor Ben Bristi says, it's got to the stage now, occupation, to understand how occupation is taking place, takes you to analyse the country, because nobody will admit it. They will not admit they've been occupied or they're under occupation. So it's a legal question. Are you occupied? You've got to go and tick boxes, these boxes, yet you're under occupation. They admit this. He's a critic of the Israeli statute of Palestine, by the way. I don't get involved with it, but he's a critic of how it's been put in place. I understand he's moving from New York to, I think it's Cambridge this year. So I really would like to meet the guy. He's a phenomenal mind, and I do like what he's got to say. He's talking to us with this book, not to academics.
So maybe we should invite him to speak.
I would love to.
But that's helpful, isn't it, that this man of such grade will come here?
Oh yeah, don't worry.
To make a stand?
If you don't ask, you don't get.
That's right. When you fill in a form and they ask for your occupation, is that okay?
Here's another good one. What's your occupation? Does anyone want to guess what that means?
Yeah.
What's your status if you've got an occupation? What's your status? You mentioned earlier on that Australian gentleman.
Right.
Military contractor, supplier, or financier. That's occupation.
If they're employed,
M is for employees deceit,
Yeah,
so it's for deceit.
yeah. So occupation is a military word, it's an absolute military word, yeah. Right, so, I mean, for example, if I say I decide I'm going to go up here, I'm occupying this space and I'm going to fight for nobody to take this bit of space here, right? It's not a de jure, it's not a lawful occupation I've got here, it's the fact. Because if someone was to take my space, I'll fight you for it, so most people will back off, you know, in case you think I'm not going to bother fighting for that. So I'm going to occupy the space, purely for the fact I'm going to fight for it, nobody else is willing to. So it's not a lawful occupation what I've done here, it's not under law, it's not de jure, it's a de facto occupation you do every day.
Don't invade my
You
space.
do it every day. We do it ourselves every day. You have to understand when you're doing it, when you're doing it. It's what I'm doing, it's de facto occupation or de jure. When you sit on the sofa, and you know your wife's when you sit down, you do jump in front of her, and you grab the seat first, or you the other way around. If the wife jumps in the seat, so her husband can't sit down, yeah? What you've just done, that's a de facto occupation, isn't it? Yeah? I'm bigger than you, or I'm nastier than you, or you know, I'll see it first, you know. Dibs, the old game of dibs as kids, I dibs that, you know, if I use that first. That's a form of occupation. Now I've said this, you start seeing it everywhere, Brussels Declaration, I'll just run through these. Territory is considered occupied when it is actually placed under the authority of a hostile army. Did you know all the counties in Britain, and this includes the ministry, you brought in, is the highest person in that county is called the Lieutenant, Lord Lieutenant of the county, you're aware of that, yeah? It's an honorary title for 1 year, an honorary title. It used to be, because that's the sovereign power of that area, right? What's happened is now become like the mayors, like the sheriffs, like the high sheriffs. These all become just a ceremonial position now because they've been replaced by administrative authorities, administrative executive. What does an executive do? You've got an executive in your councils, in your local authorities, haven't you?
Execute them.
Would you execute? If you're a soldier, would you execute? Was an officer execute? Orders. And my military guys in the room, you were right with that, yeah?
Yeah.
You execute orders. Okay. Look at who's the highest person in your local authority? Chief Executive Officer. 3 military words. Right, anyway. And secretaries, directorates, departments, all military words. Division. I'll cover this later on. I'll later on. The word district. You don't live in districts, don't you? You live in district. Yeah. Do you know what district means? Has anyone ever looked up the word district, what it means? So if you look up a legal dictionary, it just basically says the district, the district. So you know that's not where the definition comes from. You then go back to old military books, and a district in the Civil War was an area, a geographical area, which could be patrolled by a troop of soldiers. Right? Now the Lord Lieutenant of the county, his primary role, he's in charge of militia. The police are a form of militia, and also, remember during the First World War, each county had its own units with the East Kents, the Surreys, all these different units, right? That was the Lord Lieutenant raising his county militia to go into fight there. So we're replaced. Anyway, so occupation extends only to the territory where such authority has been established and exercised. Right? Right. You can go online and download the UK Joint Services Manual 2004. Because of the Iraq crime, the British Army, British forces, the three forces, decided instead of having a law of the land and a law of the sea, which existed before that, right, decided to bring them together into a Joint Services Manual. You can go online and download this for free. I urge you, right, I won't give you any clues, this is for some of you to do, right? Download that for free, jump to the section, occupied territories, it's only a few pages, it's not a big section, right? And I'll promise you, read through that, think of the UK, you go, everyone just think, is that the UK? And I guarantee every section you go, tick, 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 tick. Even when it comes down to occupational taxes. Think of what council tax is. I'll tell you now, council tax, the reason they're getting away with what they're doing is because it's not a civilian tax, it's a military occupation tax. And that's why they're getting away with what they're doing. And if someone was to in front of the court, ask the judge who's there, and they're very strange job, these supposed judges who've got these case things, ask him if he's there as a judge or as a judge advocate. Judge advocate is a military judge or a civilian acting under military authority. If you can download your judicial, sorry for doing information dump for you guys, but you can watch this back and do it yourself. I look for gaps, I look for holes, I look for strange connections, and I worry about the Jack Russell or I follow them, right? It's amazing what you find. The Judicial Code of Conduct, this is the Code of Conduct designed for judges. You can download this for free from your Ministry of Justice, download it for free, right? Now I've mentioned military law and emergency, and law like government by emergency and martial law. Go back and read that now, what a judge's role is. Because some of the questions, what triggered me was some of the questions, some of the statements made in there, some of the codes are so strangely worded. Why have they written it in such a strange way? If you go back and reread it, the thinking a judge can become a judge advocate, judge go back and forth from civilian to military, it makes perfect sense. Okay, so the Judicial Code of Conduct is free, get on the Ministry of Justice website. Oxford Laws, I wouldn't be through all. Oxford Laws of War of Land, 1880, that's what Britain must be operating under. Right, and all the civilian under Napoleonic Code countries, such as America was planned to be at the time, and also in mainland Europe, acting under Napoleonic law and with Napoleonic Code. They followed their Lieber Code and their stuff. We followed Oxford Laws of War and Land because we were common law. Okay? And there's one of the law of sea as well. Territory is regarded as occupied when, as the consequence of invasion by hostile forces, the state to which it belongs has ceased, in fact, to exercise its ordinary authority therein. Wigan Borough Council, the proper council, abandoned its position in 1874. Your councils did as well. They all abandoned their positions. Right? So they ceased to exercise their ordinary authority. So at that point, the invading state, or a state of surrender to, stepped in to maintain the order there. That's what happens. They declared an emergency. They need to go in there and administer it. And they're still there. This is why we started debating this new phrase, local authority. What gets authored? Writs and orders. Okay. You know the postal service is all military. Yes, that's all military, yeah. This is why I say if you steal the post, it's a capital offence, because they were all signals, they were all military signals deemed to be legally valid. Right, so Joint Services Manual. So see, these are not saying, what they say, what is key there is to determine whether a state of occupation exists. So it's not like we've gone in there, oh, there's an occupation, we announce it. They don't announce it. You've got to go and you've got to use clues if I've been occupied or not. So you can see all these different books. This is actually quotes in the books, right? To determine if a state of occupation exists. So nobody's telling us you've got to work it out. It's necessary to look at the area concerned and determine whether two conditions are satisfied. This is the British view of it, right? First, that the former government has been rendered incapable of publicly exercising its authority in that area. Tick, Parliament. And secondly, the occupying power is in a position to substitute its own authority for that of the former government. Tick, European Union. Right? Look at who's moving. Who's getting the primacy of law in the UK? European Parliament. So if UK court decides something and the European court decide otherwise, who wins? European courts. That's from the Joint Services Manual 2004. Right, now these are just some, I've read all these books. To me, the second most important book other than the Bible ever written was Hugo Grotius. I've said this before, I can't emphasise it enough. You can download it for free off the net. It's a blistering read. Hugo Grotius, Rights of War and Peace. Some people misinterpret the law of war and peace. It's not the war, it's rights of war and peace. Okay? That rights is a completely military word, right? Once you've been occupied, the civilians must be treated, the civilians and their prisoners, etc. Environment must suddenly become, they suddenly have rights that the occupying power has to respect. And I tell you now, the Human Rights Act in the United Nations, we in Britain, when they did the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948, in Britain even, That's these countries look good and they've been shot up and beaten, never really affect us. So we were, whatever. Never been for 1 minute would ever affect us. But human rights are for conquered countries, are for occupied countries. Because what it does, it governs the conduct of the occupying power. It gives us, that's why they've replaced, that's why judges say there's no place for this constitutional mind court. Because it's not a sovereign court. It's an occupational power court, acting under their administration, and it observes rights, human rights, which governs the occupying power within that court. Is this all making sense, yeah? Okay, that's why I hate human rights with an absolute passion, because what it represents. Right. Penal Law of Nations, Labour Code, American, Brussels Declaration, that was for the Europeans, like shooting each other. Also laws of war, land, Hague Conventions, Geneva Convention, Hague Convention. The Hague Convention governed the military personnel. So the Hague Convention governed the treatment of prisoners, military personnel. The Geneva Convention was for civilians. Okay, and Joint Services Manual 2004 from the UK. Okay, so there's Professor Ministers, but this is a quote from Professor Ben Ministry. The application of human rights law to occupations is on one level beneficial to holding the occupant to account for an enlarged scope of duties towards occupied population. At the same time, however, the treatment of the occupant as exercising some of the public powers normally to be exercised by a sovereign government runs the risk of normalising what is inherently a temporary, exceptional regime that should remain inherently suspect due to its foreignness. He nails it, absolutely nails it there, yeah? That's from that book that was passed around there. Yeah? So the occupying power exercising some of the public powers normally to be exercised by a sovereign government. It's happened all over this country now. And America, and Canada, and Australia, and New Zealand, all over the world. But they've got to the stage now, so many boxes we tick, we can't miss it, we can't miss this now. Conflicts of interest, the law that regulates the administration of occupied territories must, this is from the UK Services Manual, it says between occupier and occupied. The occupier administration must attend to at least 3 sets of interests. Then you start seeing that the government talks about these big things here, right? Security first. Our security. Everyone comes under national security, trumps everything. Whose security interest? Our security, or City of London security, because I would argue City of London security. And we're a security, so the interest, their interest in our security, because we're a financial security. Read that however you want. The interest of the ousted government, and those of the local population, which may be different from the interest of the legitimate government. So there's the three big clues in the British one. The occupant, so you go to court, and you get a strange decision from a judge. You just reflect on that. The judge's decision-making process must take this into account. Okay? And those third on the list is us, which may be different from the interest of the legitimate government. Anyway. The occupant is expected to fill the temporary vacuum created by the ousting of local government and maintain its base of power until the conditions for the latter's return are mutually agreed upon. That's what Brexit is. Total war is with civilian, the line between civilian and military becomes grey. Right, you can become a military contractor. You're not actually wearing a uniform, you have to get a military number, you're a military contractor, so you are part of the military machinery. And I believe Roosevelt warned us about it, so the JFK warned us about the military industrial complex. That wasn't conspiracy stuff, he warned us about it. Right? So it becomes very grey. What is a civilian? So everyone they're grey. Before I could say, that's even the word civilian is an interesting word, that's a non-combatant. And that's a combatant. At one time it was black. The combatants wore lovely red uniforms, big badges, the officers would run marching orders. You can spot them 100 yards away, right? Now, can you actually spot a soldier? Can you actually tell the difference between a lot of military people and a lot of civilian people? Because they look very, very similar. They wear similar badges, a lot of military personnel wear suits. It's become very grey area. It was also the First World War engravely eroded the distinction between soldier and citizen between private activity and wartime effort. This is the Defence of the Realm Act. If you've never read the Defence of the Realm Act, It's a big act, it's heavy duty. They changed completely the UK. They put all of the military footing, yeah. It was also the advent of the claim that sovereignty lies in the people, not in its government. This question of sovereignty is still hotly disputed today in the UK. Who is the sovereign? Monarch, Parliament, the people, EU, Crown. Is sovereignty itself now been treated as merely ceremonial by change agents, I should call them purpose change agents, and other factions out there, who find an obstacle to their agendas. Now this question of sovereignty, I know it's a dirty word in America, they don't like it in America, but I mean, the question of who and what is sovereign in the UK. There's a very good book by a chap called Thomas Cahill, Kevin Cahill, sorry, yeah. He was an ex-Irish officer, then served the British Army, and then acted as an advisor to Paddy Ashdown, who himself was a military officer, yeah. And the book was called Who Owns Britain? It's a fairly good book, it's heavy, but still a lot of research in it. But the ultimate outcome is the Queen. The Queen owns Britain. Well, how could you go British as an EU citizen now? So at some point, somebody has taken that and transferred over. Who owns the British land now? I don't know. Is it the IMF that's taking the return for loans? Has it been carved up? Is it NATO that owns the land? Is it the Crown that owns the land? I don't know. If you go online and search for the land registry, there's two land registries. There's one that's got a big new posh address, the one everybody raised to. There's also another one sitting in, I think it's in the Middle Temple in London. There's some barrister's office. It's got a land registry address. I'm of a suspicion that one is the sovereign one, and the other one's the occupying power. So what the very clever does got is just talking to the occupying power now, just not noticing that we're actually talking to the wrong party. We can talk to the sovereign party. So every time you transfer ownership of your property to the Land Registry, you've transferred ownership and control to them. So thereby the Britain can hand over its ownership of the land to a third party. It's very, very subtle. Anyway, blah blah blah. Dodging responsibility, right, this is the key. If an occupied land, right, he had a lot of liabilities. We need to take care of the health and welfare of the people. Welfare being cash, payments, unemployment, you take, okay? Point. The occupier, when he military occupied a piece of land, suddenly because of human rights, because of all these treaties and laws, right, suddenly adopted a huge load of liability. He had to take care of the environment of the land, he had to take care of the infrastructure, he had to take care of the health and welfare of the people, which is vastly expensive, he had to take care of transport links. Suddenly there's this huge blank check needed written. Look at Iraq as an example. It was just a huge blank check, trillions disappeared in there, right, to keep us going. So what's happened is occupying now, this doing it militarily or doing it overtly, right, is not the way to go, because suddenly you find out you're going to bankrupt yourself by occupying that power. So what they do now is they use other means, other excuses for doing occupation, humanitarian being the big ones, yeah. Or if, for example, Syria and Russia, Syria invited Russia into Syria, it wasn't an invasion, invited Russia in to help them bomb the crap out of these nutters are over here, yeah. So that was invite, that was occupation by invite, right? Iraq did the same. So there's ways of getting around it. Try my name in, please now. Just keep it. Yeah, this is a really common thing happening now. You get invited in, so technically you're not actually occupying militarily. You're doing humanitarian, or as an ally, you're going in there to militarily assist another party. Yeah. Isn't it?
Talking about this invitation and occupation, we go back to 1688, when the bishops and barons invited William of Orange to come and take the throne. That not change anything in the
Yes, this goes back a long, absolutely, mate, absolutely. I mean, go back to King John I. He invited the Vatican to come and take over Britain, didn't he? The declaration of Arbroath was basically the Scots saying to the Vatican, this is Robert the Bruce, you know, saying to the Vatican, look, these English keep up there, they keep kicking the crap out as we are a separate country, we don't want part of it. Can we have you there? Can we become a protectorate of the Vatican? and for that we'll pay this, we'll send men over to fight your war against the aggressors and the crusades and things like that. So the fact okay, so at that point it goes back off. This is not for, it's going back to Roman times, this is nothing new, it goes back to Roman times, it goes back to probably further than that, So it's all, the Civil War is full of it. So this is all the dodging responsibility by using other forms of occupational administration. Occupying power may not, now this is an interesting one, occupying power may not alter the status of public officials or judges in occupied territory, or in any way apply sanctions to or take any measure of coercion or discrimination against them should they abstain from fulfilling their functions for reason of conscience. An example of that was Norway during the German occupation, the Nazi occupation. The Nazis, and it shows you how bent judges are, by the way, right? The Nazis want to impose their laws, their occupying laws on the people of Norway, right? You'd think that judges, being these men of honour and principle, would have en masse, but bugger you, we're all resigning en masse. Yeah, turns out a very small minority actually voiced their concerns. The rest of them went along with it. And a bunch of scumbag people who'll do the same, by the way, right? One judge stood his ground, really stood his ground, and there was one judge resigned. One single judge in all of Norway resigned. To me, that's shameful. That's shameful. Okay. This happened in a lot of countries, and Norway is a good example of it. So what they can do is or instruct the judge to do anything, coerce them to do anything, force them to do anything. All they can do is allow them to stand down. That's all they can do. So judges go, there's no repercussions, we did a total shitbag and being a traitor. Oh, fine then, keep paying me the money and I'll keep doing it. Yeah, trust your judges, guys. Health and public hygiene, have covered that. We've got to cover that. With the cooperation of national and local authorities, the medical and hospital establishments and services, public health and hygiene in the occupied territory. Okay, local authorities. Penal legislation is not a sex provision. Right, so again, the penal laws of occupied territory should remain in force. It means that the criminal laws remain in force, with the exception that they may be repealed or suspended by the occupying power in cases where they constitute a threat to its security or an obstacle to the application of the present convention. Subject to lack of consideration and the necessity for ensuring effective administration of justice. So as long as they can justify it, they can change criminal law. Again, think it was happening in the courts. As long as they can justify it as being a security threat or some sort of threat. I mean, don't forget the judges, the decision-making process, first and foremost, the well-being of the economy. Secondly, is the well-being of the population. Third is their own interest. And fourth is the interest of the law, general public. So, first and foremost is financial. This to me, the main occupying power is now and always has been is financial concerns. Not necessarily banks, but certainly financial concerns. First World War was kicked off. I'm just reading a very good book on this subject just now. Was kicked off by oil and pharmaceutical and chemical cartels, primarily based in Germany, who've been sort of squeezed in by the British and and they wanted to push out, and that's what triggered the First World War. Again, that's what triggered. Who was the supported Adolf Hitler? These big corporations again. This was them for taking over, occupied, and they occupied. They were the Nazis. They occupied peacetime Germany and created the Second World War. It's happening again. It's happening again. T-tip is found out there's a thing called the European Round Table. I only found it a few days ago. This is where the big multinationals in Europe all get together in this European Round Table, and they make decisions, and then they spend a vast amount of money to get an army of lobbyists to go in there and bully and harass and beat down the European muppets that are over there in the Parliament and the Council, and force them, coerce them, bribe them, pay them, let's be honest about it, bribe them, put their own people in power as well, get their own people into positions of decision making so they can push through, and that's what's happening now. We get cartel taking over Europe. Occupier as a regulator, occupant must be a proactive regulator. For economic reasons, the occupant is an involved regulator of activities and provider services. One thing that's here at the EU, they have regulated the crap out of us. very good at it. They have regulated the shit out of us. So, there you go. More security. Realistically, one cannot expect occupants to endanger the security of the forces for the purpose of allowing local residents to enjoy liberties and rights that are usually granted in peacetime. Okay? Does anyone think we're at peace just now? No, that's a serious question to ask the room. Does anyone seriously believe we're at peace just now? Does anyone believe the Second World War ever ended? Does anyone believe the Napoleon War ever ended?
I'm still stuck on 1066.
Yeah, I'd say that as well. I'd say it's probably 1066 as well. But yeah, so we have been at financial war now, depending who you speak to, for a number of years, a large number of years. It seems to be ramping up now, it's one thing or another. A lot of stuff happened in Europe, but what do we talk about here? To do with occupation. So there you go. So they can affect local residents to enjoy your rights and liberties. Peacetime. So they can say, you're not having your rights and liberties anymore, we're replacing that with our new human rights. And the rights that we've decided to give you, which you change tomorrow, we change the state of emergency. And then your local authority constitution is a section there called the Chief Executive Officer and the emergency powers. Read it. I'll read this kind of boring stuff, right? Read it. It doesn't actually say what the powers are. And those powers are granted by the Secretary of State, or the Secretary of State. Yeah. Right, that's what powers do you have? Radio silence. And when they do exercise those powers under the Constitution, we all follow the same modular format. It's another interesting story. They're all following the same modular model now. The Constitutions beforehand, they were all different. It was hilarious reading the Constitution. Some of them were so funny, but they're all following this modular format. So if the Chief Executive Officer decides under these delegated powers, right, to enact emergency law, emergency bylaws, emergency orders, emergency regulations, do they have to tell you about it? Do you want to guess that one? Do they have to tell you? They have to tell the business manager and the borough solicitor and the mayor. That's it. The mayor, that's City of London. That's nothing to do with you. That's not the City of London. That's him grabbing on the stage. And the borough solicitor. That's it. Nobody else need to know. The council doesn't need to know. Sitting in a meeting making decisions. They could have enforced, they could have brought these emergency powers in yesterday, they cleared martial law. We've been none the wiser about it. We've been none the wiser. That terrifies me. That's no place in a democracy. That's called government by decree. What the House of Lords was about 1937. That's government by decree. Occupation taxes. Oh. It is authorised to collect taxes, this goes back a long 300 years by the way, as far as is possible in accordance with the rules of assessment and incidence and force, use the word force, to defray the expenses of the administration of the occupied territory. On the other hand, public property, certain movable property and most immovable property may not be used by the occupant. Okay, what they can do is raise local taxes.
There's no not in there. May be used by...
So maybe, oh yes, of course, yeah. Certain movable property, most movable property may be used, so they can actually sell that, they can use it, they can transfer ownership of it, they build houses on, to bring more people into the area, to raise more taxes, to pay for more security, so they can secure the crap out of us. So yeah, this is what they can do, and you won't even know what's happening, guys. You won't even know what's happening. You suddenly see houses popping up, you suddenly see new road networks get built by our military contractor friends called Serco. Right, a military contractor friends called G4S. And who was it that did the census recently? Lockheed Martin. It's a strange choice, isn't it? It's almost as if we're an occupied territory, but then there's just an audit on the occupied territory, isn't it? Yeah. Military contractor, okay. So there you go, that is a really important one, the occupation taxes. Think about next time you get a council tax demand. What are you demanding? Because what's the council, remember the councils before, their job was just to secure it, minimal, and keep the roads and bridges working. Now they've taken on all these different jobs they've got, maybe. They're in charge of the local health, they're now in charge of hospitals, they're now in charge of roads, and they're in charge of that. That makes sense when you start looking at it. They're now an occupied authority, they've now got the liability for all these different duties.
Well, did you also include the United Nations taking charge of all the oceans?
Yeah, it'll cover the occupation shortly. Occupied possession of property, an army of occupation Granting possession of cash, funds and realisation of securities is your bailiffs, by the way, which are restricting the property of the state, depot of arms, means of transport, stores and supplies, and generally all movable property belonging to the state, which may be used for military operations. Water resources, like other natural resources, are public and movable property. Okay? So there's loads in here. This is on the Steward Services Manual. Read it, guys. It's an interesting one. I know it's small print here, so I'll read it out. Can anyone tell me what national security means? This is national security. Stop talking. Can anyone tell what it means? This is on the MI5 website. So I know you're talking earlier on there, but I don't want to tell what national security means.
Securitization.
This is from the MI5 website. The term national security is not specifically defined by UK or European law. Just whatever they wanted to mean on any basis, any daily basis. Successive governments of Parliament have not defined the term in order to retain the flexibility necessary to ensure it can change to adapting circumstances, or they're going to adapt the crap out of us with that, isn't it? As a matter, and this isn't me being against national security, it's just if we've got it, I think to know what it is, who they're working for, who's paying them, and what their objectives are. That's what I know. Because at the moment I don't know who they are, I don't know who they represent, I don't know, am I the enemy, am I a friend, am I an ally, am I a civilian, am I military, and we need to know what we are. I want a system, but there is a form of a system, you know, I'm not an enemy.
Maybe it's the French troops stationed at RF, some more.
Could be the European police that get trained in the Surrey and all that thing. You know, these job troops coming in and invading England, As a matter of government policy, the term national security is taken to refer to the security and well-being of the United Kingdom. One thing caught in that the House of Lords discussion was well-being, right? Well-being is a term used by tyrants, right? And this goes back to a lot older books and that, by the way, right? But the term well-being is used by tyrants, okay? You talk about the Commonwealth as civilian peacetime. This well-being thing is another thing. Hitler's regime used these words, well-being. Well-being is a strange word, isn't it? It's not a word you'd use every day. None of us would really ever use that word. So you know it's come from, it's got a foreign root, and they've adopted a foreign word and anglicised it to try and make it fit. So blah 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 blah. Right, if you go on the MI5 website, some of the threats, the biggest threat they've got at the moment, other than religious nutters with guns and stuff, they want to kill us all, is the environment. Agenda 21, the right of some truth to the climate change thing, that's an argument for another day, so people can talk about that. However, it has been used as a cover, a front, a mask, because it is now a national security matter. And it's one of the issues that can be used to justify bringing in nursing powers. Okay? I don't know if the last few weeks, the police all over Europe, in Greater Manchester, Peterborough, shut down the town centre, they're now running major exercises. This is Northern Ireland level exercises across these countries in anticipation of public disorder. Do they know something's coming?
Yeah.
Again, Bob, I don't know. Friends and crap for me, they want to see a policeman not saluting him with a nice little civilian uniform, wearing military-esque garb. Right, the local authorities, you won't have heard this one probably, back in February 2015, all the local authorities, so-called, de facto occupying administrations, sub-regional, disappeared up to Glasgow, and they had a lovely meeting, all private, nothing published, and they all agreed the modern charter for local freedom. This local authorities have got to comply with this, right? And this sets what the local authority, the freedom to local authorities. I think this is the back what the free man movement was pushing, by the way. I think this was a reaction to it, yeah. What they're trying to do is, because the government itself done the fundamental freedom of that, they've done the same, right? Now this is what the local authorities have decided their freedoms are going to be. Interesting, right? So it tries to replace Magna Carta. It dispenses power to local authorities, cities and regions. What happened to the boroughs, counties and country, right? Addresses challenge, this is what's called a coup. This is called regime change. Addresses challenges of prosperity, equality and democracy. Challenges. I would argue, right, we're good prosperity. If we're prosperity, leave us alone, we'll create prosperity, equality, no such thing. Doesn't exist, that's a legal fiction, equality. Democracy. As Winston Churchill said, if you need the average voter, that's why no democracy doesn't work. Anyway, so this is what they've decided is the big priorities. Prosperity, equality, democracy, because that suits them. It gives them some tools, a tool by which they can beat us up with. Yeah? Calls for a different relationship between local and national governments. I've already explained that. Local national governments say we don't know who they are. Welcomes devolution, I'm sure they do. More power for us, yay! And our criminal gangster friends. Britain's local leadership can drive the next economic revolution. Revolution, I've highlighted that. You're all aware of that word revolution, yeah? What it means is full circle, you come back to somebody else's charter. This is what they have put in their charter, drive the next economic revolution.
When was there a referendum on that one?
Exactly. It's not their administrative authority, they didn't know say in the matter. Revolution, under, my missus is ex-Communist, she's ex-Soviet, I think it's a lady here from Eastern Europe, isn't it? You make me understand the stuff. But she was taught revolutionary theory in school, right? And she was taught 3 phases of the revolution. First is the knee-jerk populist revolution. It's basically crushed, it's usually not tough, right? So it's usually crushed. So it's replaced by more organised criminal gangs behind the scenes who take over the revolution. Promise, we're going to bring peace. So this fighting stuff, we're going to bring it into it, guys, right? That ends up in fighting and bun fights and what's designed that way. And then the third revolution is the one that always wins. Remember that, you know, all these little Che Guevaras out there running around thinking that even though everything about the world, they know shit, right? Because the third revolution is the one that always wins, and that's the guys who bankrolled it. That's Soviet kids were taught this at school. Okay? So Britain's local leadership can drive the next economic revolution. Freedom to decide. What the hell does that mean? This is from their man. Freedom to decide. Well, I've made a decision. It's a swear word in it, so I won't do it here. Freedom to invest. Freedom to deliver. But these are just grey words that maybe can do what the hell they want.
Double speak.
Yeah, it's new speak, yeah. And return local government and other local agency signatories to this charter commit to create stronger local economies, more growth, more jobs, more people to work. It sounds fantastic. What that also means is we are now the bosses. We're now the dictators. Shut the fuck up. Our job, we've got a duty to do here. We're going to take this over, we're going to run it, and you shut the hell up. Yeah? Anyone gets in the way, we're going to crush you because we've given ourselves this role. It's very dangerous. That's not the job of local government, sorry.
Where can you find that?
Online, modern charter local feed. Do a search for online. I stumbled, exactly what I do is I get update, I write to these different government bodies and it has to be included in their updates and newsletters, so I read them and I find a lot of stuff that doesn't goes under the radar. Create stronger, so invest more in housing, transport and other infrastructure. That word invest keeps jumping up there. Local authorities, local government are there to invest, they're there to serve. So if they're investing, who are they serving? Well, whoever's lending the money. Radically improve local services and service choice, transport and also. Does that not sound to you a bit like it's a regime change? A complete, who works for you here? Do they work for us or do we work for them?
They haven't worked for us for a long time.
Look at this. Yeah. This is the double speak, a modern charter for local freedom. That's on the populist level. You look at it first, well, that sounds good until you read it. Modern charter for local freedom. Who's getting the freedom here? Us, the local authority. That's
The guys running the area.
They are getting freedom from central government is what that's about. That's him getting control from central government and grabbing it for the little criminal cartels around the borders. So I just want to bring it to your attention. Is you on board? Want to take a break? Do you want a wee break? Or I can finish up now, or is this meal finished and carry on, your choice?
Go to the finish line.
Okay, let's do it. So as a local freedom, or just a change of management? It's a change of management. That tells me that there's a complete, and then Great Manchester, they call it the New Deal. That tells me new contracts, which tells me there's new parties. Right, toward peace. People do not understand. I'm a member of Veterans for Peace. Beautiful guys, amazing people, amazing what they stand for, etc. Right? But I've got two issues with two words there: veterans, peace. Right? If I didn't want to do the legal word for as well, the problems with it anyway. But they've called themselves that. Blah blah blah. So peace. Actually comes to the old Anglo-French word being pies. I can't pronounce this well. I don't do French with Scottish accent. Peace, earlier peace, what it means is a pact, right? It means the absence of war, sorry, the state existing during the absence of war, right? What it doesn't mean is no war, right? What it means is, at that point, nobody's fighting. That's what peace means. It just means at that point in time, people put their guns down, blah, blah. But it doesn't mean, what it doesn't mean is war's over. It just means at that point in time, it's like a ceasefire of peace, right? So very great word, peace. And you get people out going, peace, brother, I'm wanting peace. Do you even understand what the word means? It doesn't mean no war. What it means is people stop fighting temporarily, put the guns down. That's what peace means. Okay, remember the old constables, what's the job role of a constable?
To keep the peace.
What does that mean? Now, peace, the definition under law of occupation, is where there's one sovereign power, right? And their job is to keep peace. But one sovereign power keeps peace. What it means is they maintain control. When someone challenges that control, you're now in a state of conflict or war. Conflict and war are two different things, right? So you're now got conflict and war, so ceases to happen when there's a military challenge to that power. So that's the difference between peace and war. Peace is when there's no military challenge to existing power, right? It could be a non-military challenge. You could be terrorist challenges to the power. War is when there is a formally stated challenge. Okay. There's civil wars again. That's a form of war which is local. It's not international war. It's civil war. It's understood under civilian rules, right? Don't want to get too technical. Right? A pax. Remember I was talking about Pax Britannica earlier on there. It's a code of Pax Britannica governed the conduct of all British personnel abroad and governed their colonies, their protectors, right? Pax Britannica. A time of wide-ranging instability when there was only a single dominant power. So under the British control, there was a period from 1815 to 1914 when there was nothing happened. It was just, in historical terms, it was a period of time when nothing really happened. They called it Pax Britannica. Okay, British peace. Same under Roman, Pax Romana, Roman peace. Romans ended war because then they started fighting the Romans when they clubbed them over the back of the head and put them down, and peace broke out again. Right, the word war, we'll do that. Interestingly, the word for war in Latin is bellum. They started using other words because bellum sounds like the bellow, which is beautiful in Italian, yeah. Right now, occupation law. This is the law of so this is when the occupying powers come in. He now makes occupation law. Right. So that when the Allies took Germany after the Second World War, they then created Universal Declaration of Rights as a skeletal framework upon which to build a new legal system, financial system, justice system, government system, right? And then the Allies then imposed this law upon the Germans until such time as they were able to take over themselves. The law does not restrict the occupant's choice of the legal means it has to realise its duties, and these may include changing the law. The occupant may and indeed must take all measures in its power to restore and ensure as far as possible public order and safety, which would the police are preserving public order and safety. But the European Union creates all these directives to change the law in Britain, to regulate, change, adapt, supersede. That's occupation law. Agenda 21. The occupant must ensure that human activity in the territory is not harmful to global welfare. Okay. Post limine. Yeah, the guy earlier on was talking about, was he post? Yeah, he's post-liminary he was talking about, post-liminary, right? He got my tails at the back going, whoa, somebody else has got it, right? If you read Hugo Grotius, he's a whole chapter on the subject. I would really urge you to understand post-limine. If people who talk with cystic KV know that, right? That's the root of it. What happened was, the rates by which persons and property seized in war are restored to the former status of recovery. Post-limine means beyond the threshold. What other people talk about beyond the seas in England? In Scotland, it's beyond the borders of the borough or the town. But the Roman law was deemed beyond the threshold of Rome. So it was Roman occupied territory. So if you were going to Thrace as a trader, or you were going there to fight or whatever, and you were outside Rome, while you're outside Rome, in fact, a very formal proto-trust was created where the Roman Empire would look at, Roman administration would look after your territory, your land, your house, your dominion, until you came back. Yeah? And when you come back, they restored your status back to you and restored you back your property. It's called post-limine. It's a really, really important area to look into, because you start understanding what's happened since. This was the beginning of it. You start understanding what's happened since. If you jump into cystic KV, you've missed the root of it, because a lot of the stuff to do with law and war and occupation is straight out of the Roman handbook. The Vatican still uses this stuff as well. So when you talk that again earlier, I was talking about restoring himself, right? He's got to consider Roman law. He's got to do it. Burgers, yeah, okay, so they're key, they're central to this. As I say, it's the people behind the scenes, the third revolution, the guys who really win the war. Who won the Second World War? Bankers. That's what the Second World War. Speculators, bankers, and profiteers. That's who won the Second World War. Everybody else lost. Council of Foreign Relations, again, I won't go into city regions. I won't get to do it with city regions. They have now created these international, the INF, United Nations, city regions. Greater Manchester is a pilot for the rest of the country, and the city region is recognised as an international city region. That's why central government goes to do with us. These now guys are under international jurisdiction, and we're going in there arguing domestic stuff with them. You guys need to gen up in public international law, private international law. Right? So you find a lot of these terms are not native British terms, have been imported to Britain. Okay? Yeah, so district is from another dictionary. The division, this is from the Free Dictionary, I believe, a division of territory about country, state or country, county, marked off for administrative, electoral or other purposes, a regional locality. Okay? The district for the administration of justice. Secretary, a person appointed to handle correspondence, keep files, do clerical work for another person or organisation, other person being us. Executive, again, you can just go through these words. You can zoom on it. Name officer, to end, right? 1963, a man I would love to meet and knock the ground, right? With a chap called Professor J.P. McIntosh, and to my eternal chagrin and shame, he was from Glasgow, was a fellow scholar, right? The guy was a commie, an out-and-out, absolute commie. He was also a devious traitor, right? And what he did do is he wrote a book called The Devolution of Power. Nobody will publish it. Penguin will publish it, dog shit if you give them it. Only people who publish his book with Penguin. You can still buy it online. It's out of print now, but you can buy second-hand copies of it. If you can get a copy and hang on to it, get it and hang on to it. It's a collector's item, right? And what he did was, he broke down the UK and he set the blueprint by which they've created the UK today into various administrative regions. And what he did do is, whereas before I'd read a county, within that county did everything within a geographical boundary. Well, that's too democratic. That's too easy to control, right? It's not devious enough, right? So what he did do is he proposed breaking up the administration into various spheres. So you've got financial administration, judicial administration, health administration, water, you know, the whole raft of whole different areas, right? And then spreading them out, none of them sharing geographical boundaries. The idea was to confuse and frustrate, and to make it very unclear who was in charge. And this was what's called non-franchise government, right? Just to confuse the crap out of everything, right? And it's in his book, it's a stupid little penguin book, it's that thick, got pictures and stuff in it, you know. And that to me is the document by which anyone who was involved with it should be hung to the lamppost, because that was out and out treason. Okay, this is what I've done today. Private international law, read up on it. Port authorities, international territory. I've talked about port authorities before. This is what method by which they do it. A port authority has a military role to play, yeah, and you find it primarily run by companies who have a military contractor function. I won't mention any names. But you'll find if you look through the European blog, right, through a lot of the reports, right, you look at port authorities, transport hubs, transport nodes, transport strategies, regional transport strategies. What they've done now, the Europeans, EU, right, have broken up Europe into transport regions, right, and we are all just nodes. These separate regions are nodes on this hub, so it's like a machine, everything's with machines there, right? And there's no countries there, there's no borders, there's no countries, all gone. So these hubs and nodes and one thing or another, and port authorities is how they're doing it, right? And if you watch it, it's very subtle and it's very, very scary, because even the port authority has this grey vague. We've talked about Nottingham before. I'll tell you now, this port authority controls land here. That's why they've got revenue and customs and what else is here? You've got the tax office, what else? Courts are just there, all on the canal.
Yeah, they reckon they're moving all the court buildings. If they're not already by water, they're moving them.
Yeah, it was me that found that, yeah, it was me that brought that one up, yeah, initially, yeah. This happened, I've kind of picked the guy in America, Australia, New Zealand, etc. And they'll go, oh yeah, it's on Canal Street, the new court's on Water Street, well, it's next to water, it's next to a pond, you know. So, port authorities. Because what jurisdiction do port authorities operate under? No. No. International. It could be military, could be but it's international territory, so they operate under international law. Right? That's why at Tom's gig, I was telling everybody because they moved the court at the last minute and moved over to that court just over there, yeah. And I saw British Waterways Canal and I was warning everybody, they're now under international, they've now got this international territory. There's no common law here. We can't go Magna Carta. They're going to invoke. That's why the police come on wearing blue high-vis.
UN or EU, I think.
Yeah, they came on wearing strange coloured high-vis. Yeah, what the hell was that? I think because we've got a different jurisdiction, this is a very murky area. Okay? And then they do it in one month, and port authorities tell to piss off. Modern slavery. There's only one kind of slavery. The slavery. It's modern slavery is looking at. That's another story. So there you go. So any questions? Has that got people thinking, my God?
Yeah.
It's giving you a lot to think about. Now you know why I keep saying there is no law, because if it's the occupying power, they make up the law, they can change it a bit.
Well, can I possibly call you, since I have been on, given these fucking fantastic information you just given us, how you might personally see current events opening up globally, or certainly with regard to the economy and the relevance of what you just told us?
Well, Mervyn King, I don't know if you'll know, it's Mervyn King, the former Bank of England chairman, a few weeks ago warned us that he called the 1929 plus is coming. And I'm a solutions guy, I'm just a solutions, right? But he's warned us at 1929 plus, he's talking about the Great Depression, and as he said, 2008 was not a bailout, sorry, it was not a crash, it was a bailout, all this delayed, inevitable. There's plenty of other books you can read in the subject, there's plenty of other warnings, but there's a lot of top financial bloggers out there, all warning it's the petrodollar is about to go bang. And it's going to be fast, it's going to be brutal, it's going to be devastating.
We're not talking about the end of this month.
I've personally been stopped here and the worst case happens, if nothing happens, I'm going to always get food.
It'll happen.
But toilet paper, but so just I would, my personal advice to people who are giving the guy that Mervyn King are coming out and talking about it now, is, you know, just you know, be prepared for the worst if it does happen. If it doesn't happen, so you're over prepared for something finally. Yeah.
Does he give a suggestion for a date?
I've heard people talk about 28th this month.
Yes, I have.
I don't know, I don't go by dates. So how many times has the world ended in the last 10, 30 years?
Oh,
People say that?
Last one and somebody
I've
died.
been proven wrong about 30 times.
It's good, I mean, all the indication. I'll put it in perspective, I was reading a blog, right, one of the big financiers, and to put it, if I'm getting the numbers correct here, there's something, the world GDP is $77 trillion a year. That's the world GDP, right? 77 trillion. Just in derivatives alone, right, the debt is 555 trillion. That's called the Ponzi scheme, that's where they go by. There's a good book called Planet Ponzi by Mitch Firestein, which if you want the real scale of it, to frighten the crap out, you read that one. Everything's a Ponzi scheme, everything, pensions, national service, everything's all Ponzi schemes. So that's a book that genuinely, I put it down, so I was having nightmares reading the book. If you like frightening people, get after it. So get a family member you don't like the most, but call that for Christmas. So you realise the scale of the lies that's going on, the upwards, okay. And another interesting, one of the bloggers, what he did as an interesting study was he looked at the number of people who are financial experts coming on the TV, and you know the frequency they come on at, and he, particularly with just before crashes, just before booms and busts. And it's like, you know, they do things that skirts get shorter and longer. And you know that story, yeah? You're back in the 30s, but girls' skirts get longer, that's the danger of austerity. When they get shorter, there's more money around. It's fact, partly is, that is a proven fact. Yeah, you count the number of professionals, experts on the TV, reassuring you that everyone's okay, and just before a crash happens, you suddenly load these guys on TV, assuring us everyone's fine. Right, so keep an eye on the TV if you watch TV or radio, whatever, how many of these experts are coming on, because there is a mathematical correlation to how many of these guys come on TV to how bad the crash is going to be about them. But yeah, so, I mean, regarding this, occupation is not a bad thing, because at the end of the day, sometimes the civilian government does break down, chaos happens. I trust the military. I do personally trust the military. Some very, very good people in the military. They've got rid of a lot of them in the government at the moment, replacing them a lot of call them purpose drones. But the most soldiers are good people, honourable people who would not turn guns on us lot. So I'd rather trust the military than the police, to be honest.
Can I just draw you on that point, Rob? I agree with you. I wish that were the case, but right now I'm observing that there would be Eastern European, French and American services, armed services in this country, armed with a ready gun.
They were too busy worrying about their own countries. Trust me. Trust
So
me.
that's why the French are stationed in St. Morgan in Cornwall.
If shit happens over in France, they'll go back to France. What would you do if you were a squaddy?
I don't
Exactly. And when I was in Germany in the 1980s, we did a discussion one day, and we were in the NAFI one day, I was in the army, right, over in Germany, and we were discussing what would happen if the shit hit the fan, what would we do? We all went, fucking that way.
Yeah.
Seriously. If they start chucking big nuclear bombs and chemicals and training us and stuff, no way are we going to stand there and do that. Both extra stage left. And everybody did an escape plan. We were just going to get extra stage left. Trust me. Yeah, that would happen.
So from the other side as well, they go that way as well.
Yeah, exactly. I've got Russian friends and Russian soldiers, and they say the same thing. We were all scared. I mean, you look at the lifespan of a Royal Engineer in the front line was something like 12 minutes.
No,
So-
not that long.
Yeah, so it was maximum, seriously, maximum. If the war broke out, it was a tank, it was 10 seconds. Aircraft was 3 seconds, it was ridiculous.
Anti-tank gunner was.
Yeah, it's frightening stuff, So what I'm more worried about is not the military, the administration are using this at the moment, using these states of emergency to enforce political ideology on us and enforce the courts to impose political ideology on us, which was happening in social engineering. So anyway, thanks so much guys. Very much.
Debt Free TV, in association with GetOutOfDebtFree.org.